This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
И значит, он кричит, Tell me your fucking name!
I'm Goran, Albania.
Oh, when you come to New York?
Thursday.
Man is absolutely crazy.
We're here to pray.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz.
And I'm Gil Adler.
Today, our guest is a character actor, an international character actor named Mark Ivanir. And you might not know his name, but most people who go to film, TVs, who play video games, you'll see his face, you'll hear his voice, and you'll, as you do with a lot of character actors, you'll go, that guy. Mark is that guy. I know Mark socially, but the world, I think certainly the American audience knows Mark, I think a lot. Homeland as Ivan, on the show Barry. You're really funny in Barry. The twins, were they twins or triplets?
Well, the third brother who dies.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's three brothers.
He dies in the pilot, and I joined episode 2. So okay. Let's say twins.
Okay, all right, twins. I think a lot of people know you from there. Of course, you've got a ton of feature film work. We'll get to all that. If you play video games, you know Mark's work. Good God, have you been in virtually every single Call of Duty?
Going dog.
A lot of Call of Duty.
A ton of Call of Duty and some Assassin's Creed and Wolfenstein. Oh, we'll get to all of that. But the world knows Mark that way. Gil has never met Mark before. As I said, I've had the pleasure of knowing Mark socially for a long time now.
15 years, maybe.
15 years, yeah. My goal today is to let the whole world know the Mark I know.
Mark, I'm a little upset because having known Alan for 15 years, I suspect your judgment of character isn't as good as I thought it was.
Yeah, well, everyone's got their flaws.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm gonna keep silent until you guys figure out your stuff.
Yeah.
You started your life in you were born in Chernivtsi, which was formerly the Soviet Union, now the Ukraine, which makes you incredibly topical.
It's for many years I've been introducing myself as Russian because that's my first language, and in Israel, in which I grew up, I was not Ukrainian because there's no such a thing. He's a Ukrainian. You're like generally Russian if you come from the USSR.
Sure.
But then, yes, in the last year exactly, that distinction is really important now to say, no, I'm not Russian, I'm Ukrainian. And it's very, very sad what's happening there. Though it's a bit of a... It's happening everywhere now. The world is a bit of a scary place with what's going on.
Well, go Ukraine. Their struggle is our struggle.
No, definitely.
Now you left. Well, it was the Soviet Union then when you were 7 years old.
I was about 7. My parents decided to leave it was the 70s, the whole let my people go movement, and there was a window of opportunity.
But you have distinct memories of living in the Soviet Union, a thing which no longer exists. Yeah, definitely.
That was my childhood, and I kind of liked it. It was nice for me. In that city, we didn't feel, as Jews, we didn't feel too much anti-Semitism, especially as a kid, and it was a nice way to grow up. And then but then my parents decided, because I have a big mouth, they didn't tell me we're going to Israel, because there wasn't like a good thing for everyone to know, and they told me we're going to go to Moscow. And of course, like 20 minutes later, I was downstairs at the yard telling everyone we're going to Moscow, that though they told me not to speak about it. But basically, after 48 hours of travel on the way to Israel, which I didn't know that's where we're going, by uh, I think the Czech Republic, they just told me, we were in the train and they told me we are actually going to Israel and not to Moscow. And that was such a traumatic experience. I remember sitting there. I really remember that train. I don't know, where we were sitting, and I was crying my eyes out. I was so scared, because all I knew about Israel was this is a place where, there's wars and soldiers, and there was that wasn't easy. But then I came to Israel, and that's my central identity, I guess, is Israeli more than anything else, because I spent there between the age of 7 and 34. That's 27 years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Indeed. You settled in. As you said, this became your mantle. And because you were Israeli, you had to do military service.
Mm-hmm.
And your military service was kind of interesting, because you ended up in an intelligence unit of the IDF.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how back then it was an extremely uh secretive, clandestine unit. No one, you would talk on the phone with someone, and you couldn't pronounce the name of the unit. That was, I mean, if you heard your friend saying that, you would be, ah!
Yeah.
And then now, in the past 10 years, as soon as Israel became this empire of high tech, and it was kind of moved by this unit, which was very instrumental in creating a lot of people who got into high tech and became very successful. So now suddenly, I remember like 5, 6 years ago, I started seeing the name of the unit, which is 8200, in the newspapers. And each time in the beginning, I was so stressed. I was like, how is it possible they do
Yeah.
that? So now it's like the go-to play. Everyone wants to get there, because that's the path to become to a unicorn. But back then it was really interesting, and for my career it was helpful, because I'm playing a lot of spies and international, I don't know, figures, and that was I was part of incredible hindsight uh, operations. I was like, one day I get a phone call from a director who says, "So we offered you this job on this movie called the Red Sea Diving Resort, about how the Mossad."
We will come to that, because that if had you not really the connection between your role in that movie and your role
Yeah.
in real life is really, that's a very cool story.
So should I tell the story now, or should we wait?
No, this is exactly right. But I wanted to make sure that we understood that your art and your life intertwined in such an unusual fashion that
Yeah. So
now.
this guy.
But let me start here.
Yeah.
As part of your service, when you were working for, it was a unit 80, what was it called again?
8200.
8200.
8200.
You were involved in Operation Joshua.
Yeah.
And
Well, it was called Operation Moses. They had phases, but yeah.
right, and this was part of a larger operation. This was kind of a mop up to a previous operation to try to get as many of the Ethiopian Bet Israel Jews out of a lot of them had gotten into Sudan at that point, to get them out
It
as many
was
as possible.
Ethiopia was war torn, and especially these Ethiopian Jews were persecuted and murdered and etc. and the government of Israel at the time decided we're gonna try and get them to Israel as soon as possible. It started with a Mossad operation.
Now
Uh,
let's now, but before we go there, I want to make sure that everyone understands who exactly we're talking about when we say these Ethiopian Jews. It's a very unusual group of people. They is a group of black Jews whose history dates back 2,000 years.
yeah,
They really can. It's how they came about is still a mystery. There
it's
are
a mystery. They say they are the descendants of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba.
yes,
And there's interesting research about it, but basically, I mean, still, it's close to Israel. So there was you can see how during the last, I don't know, 2,000 years, people went there and ended up being there, Jewish or not, and but they have been for hundreds and hundreds of years
2,000
identifying
years.
as Jews.
In fact, what's really interesting about them is they practice a pre-rabbinic form of Judaism,
Correct, correct.
and and it really which predates the destruction of the Second Temple.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating, and I've
Yeah.
been, I mean, you had people, all sort of Jewish uh travelers who went there 300 years ago, 400 years ago, and started reporting about this incredible group of people in Africa that have all of these Jewish, as you say, ancient traditions that they kept, and they've been very adamant about staying and being Jewish, though it was very dangerous.
Indeed. Indeed, and in fact, there's a whole group, the Falasha group, which were like
Yeah,
conversos. They were like the Marranos in Spain,
correct, correct.
who converted. The history really, in a way, mirrored what happened in Europe.
Yeah,
They're a
yeah.
fascinating group of people. There are about 120,000 of them now in Israel.
Yeah, well, I know that during that operation that we're going to talk about 20,000 were brought
Right.
to Israel, but it's been going since the like early 80s.
Right.
It was a total secret. No one knew about it. It was
Indeed.
completely clandestine. So
Okay.
basically, what happened was this guy director calls me and says, "Did you get the message about the part in this movie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, and maybe you can choose between these parts." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I probably would choose the head of the Mossad because it's going to take shorter time of filming because I want to be with my family and blah blah blah." And we have all of this conversation. It's like, and by the way, I say, I was there, and he's like, what do you mean? So this was it started as the Mossad started. They took a uh, abandoned diving resort that was founded by Italians in Sudan. Now, Ethiopia is landlocked, so you couldn't get people. It was very difficult to get them out from Ethiopia. So they traveled for 2, 3 weeks by foot on the mountains, exposed to danger to Sudan, got near this diving resort that was operated by the Mossad as a diving resort by day, and at night commando from Israel come in the beginning in boats and get them out, load them on boats and get them out, and then next morning they would work with Japanese tourists, teaching them to dive. At the end, what happened, the Sudanese kind of got a word of it, and that got canceled,
An
and that
Israeli newspaper put out that this was happening. Isn't that what
uh,
happened? I, I,
I'm I,
I believe
I'm
I
not
read.
sure about, maybe I'm not sure about the details how that happened, but that part went away. And then what they were doing is that still Mossad people were in the area. Planes would come in the middle of the night from Israel, Hercules planes. Groups were waiting. I don't know, dozens, hundreds were waiting in the middle of the desert. The plane would land pitch dark in the middle of the desert, and load these Ethiopian Jews on the Herculeses and would go back. And that was my thing. That's I ended up being on two of these Hercules flights coming, landing in Sudan, running out. It would take about 7 minutes, the whole thing. You land, run outside, get all of these babies and old people, and load them on the plane, go back to Israel, and that was it. But that was crazy. The first time I went there, I didn't know that was what was happening. I just like they gave us some sort of a short brief, and then only when we were on the plane they told us what's going to happen.
Need to know. That's it. Hey, it's the spy world.
Yeah. It's called the Red Sea Diving Resort. The movie's on Netflix.
Gideon Reif, who you also worked with on Homeland, he wrote and directed. He was he has his military background as a paratrooper, so the whole thing kind of Right. After you finished the service, but before you got going, the Mossad recruited you.
I've been approached 3 or 4 or 5 times by them, and most of the times I would say no. I worked for one branch for some time, but I mostly said no to them because I wanted to be an actor, and they would bring me. It was every 2 years I would get a phone call in the middle of the night. Would you come and meet us? And I would go to 13 floors of that. The elevator only goes to that floor in the middle of a high rise, and sit, and they tell me all kind of operations they want me to be part of, and most of them I was like, no guys, I'm good in theater. Yeah, it works for us. We want you to be an actor. That's like, yeah, I know, but I'm not interested now in
I mean, after all, don't actors make great spies, and don't spies make great actors?
I guess, but I mostly rejected.
You wanted to do real acting as opposed to
Exactly.
acting that could get you killed. You thought about medicine for 2 seconds, but then you ended up in a circus school for 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, my dad really wanted me to become a doctor.
Of course.
But while I was, doing my updating myself in physics and math, and which I never was good at,
That'll make it hard.
I took a year off after the armies, like decided I'm gonna just do whatever I want to do before I become a doctor and go for 7 years of university and blah blah blah. And then all I wanted to do, all I was doing, suddenly I looked back and I was like, okay, so I'm doing tap dancing and magic tricks and juggling and everything. Is like, okay, I think something is getting clearer and clearer. And then I joined this school, and after 2 years, I ended up going, traveling in Europe, and I worked for some time in the circus, and then I was like, okay, so now let's go. And
You ended up in Paris at the Cirque Pavel.
Cirque Poils, yeah. And I was there I was doing some juggling, and I had this funny, crazy number that looks like 2 little people fighting, and it's one suit that does that. And but after a while there, I was like, okay, so that I got that. That's fun. I can juggle and do somersault, but let's continue. And then I went to an acting school, and yeah.
You eventually end up at the Kasher Theater.
Yeah.
In Tel Aviv. The company was originally composed of immigrants from the USSR.
Yeah, it was 1989, and the wall fell, and a group of Russian actors and a director who passed away a year ago, who was my teacher and father figure in a way, and everything. He was
Nissan Nativ.
Nisanativ was my acting teacher. This was Yevgeny Arieh.
Okay.
And he founded this theater, and he was
Ah, I got you. I
the
got you.
lead director in it. So they formed the theater, and somehow to uh, I got offered the lead in its first piece, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Not Dead by Tom Stoppard.
Cool.
And I remember I was you know it was just after acting school, and I joined this little group theater ensemble, and I told them, hey guys, I'm not sure I'll be able to do the first show because this Russian theater came and they offered me the a part in a Stoppard
For
play.
for for
Great.
for for reference sake, I should point out that in the years that followed, Yasher became huge. The London Times calls it one of the six best theater companies in the whole world.
Yeah, yeah, no,
So it's a really you were part of the formative moments of what
yeah, I
became
was one
a
of the
really significant theater company.
co-founders. I was one of the co-founders of theater, but in that the little ensemble
Yeah.
friends group that were doing theater, when I told them about joining this theater, they was like, "You are you're a coward. Instead of working with us and doing something that is like theater at its core, you're just going to these Russians who nothing is going to happen with them, but you feel it's like easy, so you go there and blah." I remember this conversation, and then 8 months later, and it wasn't easy because it took me about a week of rehearsals to realize these people, they came from the Russian theater. They were big in the Russian theater world, which was incredibly much more uh advanced than the Israeli theater at the time. And then so I'm starting this lead on the play, and suddenly I realize they're so much better than me.
Yeah.
I am so in such a level under them. It took me quite a few months to just get adjusted and become feel that I'm part of this thing. And yeah, and it became a huge success.
The managing director at Gesher, her name was Lena Kreindlin,
Hmm.
and she said that your Russian was terrible.
They laughed at me. They laughed at me because we're talking about, well, it was 1990, and I came to Israel in 1972 when I was 7. So
From Russia,
I,
from Russia.
Ukraine, sorry.
Oh,
Uh,
okay,
and
okay.
I didn't have, I had Russian, but it wasn't very good, and
Yeah.
my basically the accent was kind of crap.
Ah,
But then 10 years in this Russian theater uh, being mostly speaking Russian throughout the day, it got much better. But in the beginning, yeah, they made fun of me.
for Americans, it's the difference between an authentic British accent, which can be very varied from place to place to place.
Hmm.
Americans, and how Americans view different accents. It's
Accent, exactly.
uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. When I tried to do a British accent, my both my daughters are like, "Dad, stop it, please. This sucks. Just please don't do it."
Eventually, you find your way into feature films. Um,
Yeah.
you end up working. You get cast by Steven Spielberg in Schindler's List.
Yeah.
But how you actually got the role you got is a little more complicated.
Oh yeah. There's a story there. So I'm in Gesher Theater, and at this point we are one of the six best theaters in the world. We travel the world and perform in Rome, New York, Paris, blah blah blah. And then I am in theater. I'm a like a player in a big uh theatrical kind of world. And suddenly I remember my agent calls me and she says, so they want you to audition for a part in a new movie. Steven Spielberg, the guy who did E.T., she tells me, and he's doing a movie about the Holocaust. I don't know, something Schindler, something like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, yeah, well,
Very little movie.
Yeah, and then she said, and I said, so when is the audition? It says tomorrow at like 10. It's like, well, no, I can't do 10. I have a dentist appointment and I kind of bailed on them already twice, so I can't make it because I am, in the theater. I don't need this crap. And then and she ended up, you know, ending the conversation. Is like she put the phone down. It's like, I don't want to talk to you. And then at 10, I'm at the dentist and suddenly to myself, it's like, are you dumb? Why? Why? It's like it's 5-10 minutes walk from here, that casting place. Just go there. And I ditched the dentist yet again and went to audition, did the audition, and then got a call back and then got a part. And it took another year between from that the audition period till they started shooting the movie, uh, during which the part was written out of the script. And I was okay, so I'm not gonna do this movie. It's fine. I'm still in the theater. All is good. And then one day I getting a phone call from that agent. It's like, this is crazy. They've started shooting the movie already. I mean, they're like 2 months into shooting the film. They want you for a much bigger part. It's really important, and they want you to fly like tomorrow, and or the day after tomorrow. And I'm like, what? How do I? First of all, I need to tell my theater that I'll need to be away for 2.5 months. Then I need to figure out with the army, going back to the intelligence forces, I'm signed when I joined that unit that I can't go to any ex to any communist country. At this time, we were shooting in Poland, which was an ex-communist country.
Yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
had
Oh,
to
unusual
somehow
qualifications.
over. I mean, I just went and I just hoped it was fine. No one stopped me, so that was okay. Then I went and starting shooting, and I was so curious to figure out what happened. Why suddenly out of the blue, after 2 months of shooting, they decided that they want me to do this much bigger part. After what the hell happened? And I asked one of the the PAs of Spielberg's, like, whether he knows something about it. And he's like, yeah, yeah, actually I do. I remember what happened. I was like, we were sitting, and the guy who went for this part, who had the part, an Israeli guy, he was in the theater and he got into a car accident. And Steven liked him very much and said, okay, we'll build the thing around you. So we'll give you 2 months of getting better, and then we'll fly you in. But then a week before he was supposed to fly in, his doctor said, you can't. I mean, you're not healed enough. You can't get on the plane. So they asked the casting office in Israel to send them video tapes. I mean, we're talking VHS back then, of the people who auditioned for his part. They sent it. So they're sitting in this room with Spielberg, Kate Capshaw, his wife, a few more people, casting and all, and they are popping the VHS in and looking. But as VHSs go, there were auditions for different things in the beginning, and that was like towards the end of the VHS. So they just do fast forward, and no one is looking at it. Everyone is talking, but Kate Capshaw, who is just like, she said, hey, yeah, can you stop this? Because with the fast forward, she saw my face with my Jewish nose, and I had these round glasses and curly hair and everything. It's like, what's up? And Stephen,
You look like her
look at
husband, for
this face.
Pete's sake.
Yeah. It's like, Stephen, look at this face. And he's looking, he's like, yeah, I remember him. Because I did have a small part. Yeah, let's take him. And that was how my life changed. Because had it not been that, I wouldn't have been
Like
sitting
Moses,
here.
plucked from the reeds.
Exactly. Exactly. And I wouldn't have been sitting here in LA in Silver Lake talking to you about my international career had not Kate Capshaw
It's
that
a remarkable
VHS.
story of how much serendipity and chance affects things that happen in this business and careers.
Did you, Mark? Can I ask you a question? Did you ever meet Bronco Lustig?
Yeah, we were very friendly. Bronco, Uh, I actually have somewhere a tape of me of a conversation with Broncos that someone took on set. But he was the sweetest man. He was one of the producers of the movie.
Yeah,
And he was originally from Serbia, so he
yeah,
was bringing trains with Serbian people who were at the war at the time in Serbia, who were extras in all sort of scenes of the camps. I remember that very well, and all of the ADs were Serbian. Yeah, he was very instrumental in that movie.
yeah. I met him many, many years ago in the '70s in
Uh-huh.
in the then Yugoslavia. I was there scouting a movie with Dick Fleischer, and the
Oh,
local producer was going to be Bronco, and I was the producer. And so I met with him and chatted with him, spent a lot of time with him, and I kept on thinking to myself, at your age, what what did you do in the war? And I never felt like I could ask him. And so we never discussed it. The
uh-huh,
movie, the movie never happened. It fell apart. I go
uh-huh,
back, come back to New York and then to Los Angeles. And Bronco starts making his way to Los Angeles. We meet again in Los Angeles.
uh-huh,
And he says to me, he remembers vividly and fondly our conversations in Yugoslavia and Yadran, with the company in Yugoslavia. And he said to me, I really enjoyed our conversations. And I said, yeah, I did too. I said, I needed to ask you a question then, and either I was too young or too frightened, or maybe both, to ask you. But I
yeah,
really kept thinking in my mind, I wanted to ask you, what did you do during the war? Because you obviously were of age that had some meaning. And I never for a second, and he said to me, his answer was he was Jewish. And
yeah.
I fell on the floor. I said to him, I didn't want to ask you because I figured you must have been a German or working for the Germans.
No,
I never thought for it. And so he lifts up his shirt and he shows me the
the
numbers.
number. Yeah.
And I just about fell on the floor. Well, from that moment on, we were like, almost connected at the hip. I love the man.
Oh,
Spent
such
as
a
much
great
time
guy.
as I could with him. And it was just, it just goes to show you. I mean, had I said something to him all those years earlier, our relationship probably would have been very different from way, way earlier.
Correct.
But
Correct.
he was an incredible
He
producer,
was.
an
He
incredible.
passed away what, like 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was wonderful.
yeah, he was. He was really good at what he did, and he was an incredibly nice man.
Yeah, yeah.
As good work does, your work in Schindler's List got you more work. And eventually you ended up working with De Niro in The Good Shepherd. You won the Silver Bear Award at the Berlin Film Festival for that.
Yep. It took some time to get cast in it. It's one of another project that took a very long time until it happened. And then so I had a meeting with him after I read for it. Then they asked me to come and meet with him while he was filming Meet the Fockers in Los Angeles. So we sat in his trailer and talked about the part. And what was funny is that I kind of, well, there's a few stories about that, but one of them was that in the audition, the original audition, I kind of added, because I'm playing a character that is being severely drugged. There's interrogation.
Your name.
I told you my name.
Tell
I
me
told
your
you
name.
100 times.
Because
This is my
we're
name.
not going anywhere. I just want you to know that. We are not going anywhere. Today, tomorrow, next week, next
You're
month.
Emojin. He is Yomo. I'm not.
Do you understand?
I
I
can't
want to be
tell
right
you
in front of
anything
you.
else.
The same position.
This is my name.
What is your
My
name?
name is Valentin Grigorievich Milon. This is my name.
Tell me your name.
I don't have a different name.
Tell
I
it.
don't have it.
Tell it.
This
Tell
is
it to
my
me.
name.
Tell it to me again.
Valentin Grigorievich Milon.
Tell it to me again.
Valentin Grigorievich.
Tell me your fucking name! You can say it. We are gonna be here a long time.
I told
Shut
you
up!
200
Shut
times
up!
I don't have a different.
Tell me your name! Tell me your name! Tell me your fucking name!
Всегда будет небо, всегда
I remember De Niro's assistant calling me and says, "So you sang this song in the audition. We want to keep that, but we don't want to get the rights for. I mean, we need the rights for the song. That we don't have that. But Universal gave us another song, and so here's the song." And I call him back 20 minutes later. It's like, look, I mean, De Niro most probably knows as an actor, if you choose something, there's a reason. And I chose this song for a reason, because it says it does something to me emotionally. The other one doesn't. So just if you can convey that to Bob. And literally 3 minutes later, I get a phone call from this guy. He says, Bob said, just stay with this song. He'll do whatever needed for you to have that, because that's the most important thing. And then it was an incredible, the whole shooting process was incredible. He was so very much tuned to what me as an actor, what I needed, including at a certain, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but including at a certain stage, just stopping there was a scene that was supposed to be done, and then they canceled it because of problems, financial problems and time problems and blah, blah, blah. And I called him and I said, again, look, that scene is really important to me for the last very significant scene that I have. So I don't know, of course, you're the director, you should do whatever, but I just wanted to let you know. And he stopped everyone that were getting ready for the new scene and all the light and the set and everything. And he said, no, we're going to actually do that scene because it's important. And that, which cost them, I'm sure, a lot of money, but that was him. He is really focused on what you as an actor need. And thank God the result was really good, because how he was so attentive and went for what
he trusted you.
He said. Yeah, we were standing in the middle of the set, me, him, and the DP, who was, hindsight, I heard he was the producer's man, and he was representing the producer's position, and he was like, we don't need it. And it was me and him for 15 minutes talking about it, and then De Niro's like, who was silent, just looking at it, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna go with the actor. And everything stopped, and they went back, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful, and actually, it seems like I'm gonna do. That's a bit of a. I didn't sign any NDA, but I think I might do a Netflix show with De Niro in the next couple of months.
Oh, cool.
We are just in negotiations for that, so
Oh, cool,
that would be
cool.
really exciting to get back. We haven't seen each other for 15 years, 14 years, something like that.
You know, having experienced the joys of putting the team back together again, it's good to put the team back together again.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting.
I think the first piece that I saw where something went, wow, hey, there's a guy named Mark Ivanir and he can act, was you played the part of the human resources manager in a film of that title, The Human Resources Manager, and it's this quirky little. It's an Israeli movie, isn't it?
It's an Israeli movie.
Yeah. It's just this odd little thing that goes about wherever it goes about, but it's a really delightful little movie, and you're terrific in it.
Thank you. It was. It's based on a novel by a famous Israeli novelist, Aleph Bet Yoshua, and it's a story of a human resources manager who in a bakery, and then there's a terror attack, and a foreign worker from Romania who used to work at the bakery dies in the terror attack, and then this human resources manager is launching into this path of trying to figure out what happened to this woman and try and bring her back to to bury her in Romania with her family, flies to Romania, meets with her son and ex-husband, and it's like a whole road movie, but
With a
very
body,
unusual.
with a body.
With a body,
Yeah.
very unusual, very quirky, as you say, sad and fun. It was a nice movie. It won the Locarno Film Festival. I hindsight, I really enjoyed it, and I from time to time I just like, yeah, I'll watch it again because it's heartwarming and nice.
It is. It's a delightful movie, and people should catch up with it. You were the fourth lead in the late quartet opposite Philip Seymour Hoffman, Christopher Walken, and Catherine Keener. That's another terrific piece of work.
That was an incredible, really incredible experience because sitting with these three people was like going to school again, to acting school. I mean, that was what 10 years ago, and that was about 20 years after my last acting school experience. But it was really sitting with masters and seeing them at work, and just wow, how I need to remember that and that and that. Like in particulars, it's just the way all of them were so open. There was so much improvisation happening there, and listening. And I mean, Phil was just an amazing guy. I feel so, bad about, of course, him going away. He was on the list of my best. If you put five best actors ever, he would be on that list.
Hmm.
And so I feel kind of blessed being part of that event and working with these people. I mean, and here's a funny story about them. So we had a 1 week rehearsal period on which we would come in the morning and just do every scene and go through the scenes and rehearse them. And so we're sitting one morning, and Phil and Catherine, who were friends besides the shooting from before, they have like something is happening there between them. They're laughing and they're whispering to each other. And like an hour and a half into the thing, there's a break, and we would go and smoke a cigarette outside after like in between rehearsals. So all three of us step outside and smoke a cigarette. And I asked them, "So guys, what's going on? What's the little thing that happening between you?" And Phil is saying, "So look, I mean, we were just talking about how everyone thinks we are like I'm an Oscar winning actor and Catherine was nominated and we did this and that and then and that, and how insecure we are and how little we know, and what we how stupid and not adequate we feel. And that, so the gap between that and what we are having when people are looking at us and talking, that was kind of funny, and we were kidding about that. And to me it was so eye-opening that this guy who was nominated for 3 Oscars in the past 4 years and won one, and Catherine, who were in these, and that's what they feel. So wow. So we are in the middle of Manhattan, and we are crossing the street from, I don't know, I think we were shooting at the Met, and the trailers were on the other side of the street. So we are crossing the street, and there's in the middle there's a little uh, uh, like pathway, and we're standing, all three of us, waiting for the cars to pass, and a taxi stops, and I'm standing in between Phil and Christopher Walken, and the taxi stops. I did many years ago, I did two movies called Undisputed 2, Undisputed 3, which is fight movies, UFC, how is it called? I don't even know, but like wrestling, and they became, both these movies are like in the top martial arts movies ever because of how they are. And I play a major part in that. But people when I go to Thailand, I know when people recognize me. In South Africa, it's like it's still straight to video type of audience. So we stand there, Phil, Walken and I, and a taxi pulls over, and this guy looks at me, points the finger at me, and is like, Gaga. That's the part. That's my part. You are amazing. You are an amazing actor. And he drives away. And both of them are like, what the hell has happened? I was like, he didn't know who they were. It was me, Gaga. And, and I'm like, yeah, it's Undisputed. You should watch it or not.
Your work in TV, you've done tons and tons, both here in Europe, in Israel, and we'll get to Israeli TV in a second. It's having a kind of golden age, it seems.
Yeah.
Here, you a ton of people know you from your work in Homeland as Ivan.
Harry Matheson's name in that kill
Yeah.
box.
A conversation like this might lead to the SVR, might even lead to me. It will never, ever lead to you, okay? As I told you, my problem.
You better be fucking right.
You better fucking relax, Allison.
It started with they asked me to audition for a couple of parts. One was Israeli, that wasn't very good, but then there was this Russian part that I really liked, but I didn't know where it's going to go. I mean, it was supposed to be 1 or 2 episodes. And then, so I booked a part. They flew me to Berlin to shoot. And I was talking to Alex, who is one of the producers of Homeland, who called me while I'm in Berlin and started, explaining to me about this spy guy who is tried to give me some background for this guy, and like at a certain stage, and Alex keeps, when we bump into each other, he keeps telling the story. It's like I'm telling him, yeah, I have some experience, and I told him about my experience in the Israeli, intelligence forces, and then he's like, oh, you know what? Okay, so just like do your thing. I'm not gonna tell you anything, and it's fine.
So Marcus had to relocate because of a noisy neighbor. So we're going to pick up the this Homeland story from where were you before you were so rudely interrupted?
So I was saying that my the way I work is I come up with suggestions, and I just try to suggest them. So which I kind of pay the price for them throughout the years. Spielberg, at a certain stage, going back to Schindler's List, didn't want to talk to me when I was just like pushing an idea, and he really disliked that. Thank God he hired me for other projects later, but at the time I thought that's the end of my career, and other places. So in Homeland, it was the same thing. I came up with a few ideas of what my spy guy should do and how he should operate, and it resonated with the producers and the directors, and then it was kind of implemented in what I was doing, and the part kept growing, and they brought me back. So it's one of the arc that I had there. I love it. It was a beautiful project to be part of.
It was a great season.
It was a good season. It was nominated for the Emmy. It was really nice.
Whole point is that Barry have no connection to our family. You follow him around and be personal photographer? That's connection. Why would you do this?
You killed my brother?
Okay, you need to let that go.
Oh my God, no one cares. It's so boring. Every day they kill my brother.
Let me kill him.
The tomb?
Ruslan here was last one born, so he got a little overcooked.
Rustling, right? Is rustling? Yeah, you know what, buddy? You are in America now, man. Yeah.
This was a part I auditioned for, and I didn't know who would it's going to be with and everything. But again, this is something that I had an idea of what to do. I was bursting into all sort of, Russian in the middle and singing songs and doing stupid things because it was, it seemed like I can, the way it was written, that the sides that I got. And so I went into the room and Bill Hader was in the room, and I remember I started working there, and then I just like got into uh I started improvising and doing stupid shit, and then I see Bill starting laughing, and he's like, it didn't stop, and I remember getting into the car, calling my wife Maya from the car, and said, this was so beautiful, just like, I mean, that because I haven't done theater for a long time, and that was like, in the theater you are in the room, and something that you do, the reaction is so immediate. We were shooting this scene in which I go to a theater because I want to kill uh, Barry's girlfriend's character or something. And so the scene is I'm in that, we were shooting in Silver Lake in this theater, and the director says, okay, so Mark, so you'll go from the top of the theater down to the stage. You stay by the stage, look up, we'll catch your gaze, and then we'll moving on to a different scene. We're doing that. I'm going down, standing there looking, and so cut. Let's move on. It's like, yeah, one moment. It's like, do you think can I have another take? And he's like, yeah, sure, because it's they just go with what you say. It's like, because I'm thinking this is a crazy uh, killer who is his hobby is basically slashing people's throats, but he is in the theater, he is by a stage, and it's a universal thing that you have this, you might have an audience, you might have, I mean, you are on a stage, so action. And I ask the character, I go down and then I climb on the stage and just look into this empty uh hole with seats. uh Cut, let's move on. It's like, can I have another take, please? And now in my head I know that this crazy dude, crazy murderer guy, will try to perform because I'm on a stage, and because I have it's like not real, but still I have an audience.
Yeah.
What if he performed? In my head I run all of the scenarios. What can I do? It should be a song, should be a song I know in Russian. I find something from the 70s that I knew by heart, and it's about hockey players. And
Of course it is.
yeah, the main thing is like a coward doesn't play hockey. That's the song. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. Action. I go down, go up the stage, stand there, and improvise. And they let me improvise for about 2 minutes. I'm doing this improvisation of someone who gets there and ends up singing the song. Cut. Everything is done, and everyone is clapping. There's like applause after the thing. It's like, oh well, thank you, thank you, thank you. 2 weeks later, Bill, I come for another shooting day, and Bill says, that thing that you did, that's one of my favorite things in the series up until now. It's like, yeah, but it's not going to get into the series. I mean, right? I mean, is it? Well, you don't know. You'll never know. 4 months later, I'm in Cape Town shooting the Red Sea diving resort that we talked about before, and they want me to do ADR from Cape Town for Barry. I'm doing ADR, talking to the producer, and it's like, so what happened to that little scene where I go on the stage and do all of that singing? And he said, yeah, you know what, I'm not sure it's gonna get in because apparently there's no rights for the song. That's a problem. I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize in the 70s that they had rights in USSR, but yeah, whatever. I come back from Cape Town. They invite me and everyone else in the cast to Sony for a screening of the season of Barry. And I walk into the movie theater, and Bill from afar sees me. He's like, hey, Mark, you need to hear this. He says, 3 weeks ago, Sony put a guy on a plane who flew from LA to Moscow, took a train from Moscow to some godforsaken place, took a boat to this island on which the 93-year-old composer of the song is, to sign him on, off the rights for the song, only for the 7 seconds of what they put in the series, and that's how it made it there. And that's like, okay, thank you. And it's in
Oh
the
my
series.
God.
Yeah,
You are one expensive actor, my friend.
I am. I'm sorry. Yeah, I am.
Oh my God, that is a very funny story. You were big in Israel. That's way better than being big in Japan.
I
Uh,
guess never
it,
been big in Japan.
it's amazing the golden age that Israeli television is experiencing. Homeland was based on an Israeli show.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I think. Well, before there was In Treatment. I think that was the first one that kind of broke into American audience, and HBO picked it up, and that
Yeah.
did
And
In
then
Treatment based.
Netflix, of course. Well, Shtizzle. Shtizzle
There
is
was
popular in places
Stiesel,
you would never expect a show like that to
exact.
be
I
popular.
mean, Stiesel, and then Fauda is
Shtizzle,
another
sorry,
one.
sorry.
No, it's fine. And then Fauda is another
Yeah.
huge hit. And
You were supposed to be in Fauda or
I was supposed to be in the last fourth season, but
huh.
then last moment the Omicron started, and then a 3-day shoot in Israel turned into a 5-week
Yeah.
stay there, because you had to quarantine for a week, and then you couldn't go back and forth, and I was like, on the day I was supposed to fly into Israel, I called him and said, "You guys, you have that week of quarantine that I was supposed to stay in, to get a new actor and get him into the part, because I just can't do that." Unfortunately, but hopefully, I don't know. There's more. Hopefully, there's going to be more seasons. Fourth season was, they say, the best, so they probably will have another one, and then you
It
never
was
know.
a strange ending to season four with the whole group looking like they could be somewhere between life and death, all holding hands there on
A
the ground. Okay.
literal cliffhanger.
Yeah. Not,
Yeah.
But
not not that we're fans of the show or anything.
but to your point, Alan, about the popularity of Israeli television,
Hmm.
and this is something I'm really interested in talking to you about, Mark, is
Yeah.
Fauda is one of my favorite shows. I just
Mhm.
love that show, and I love it not for the obvious reasons. I don't think I love it because I see Israelis and Palestinians in front of the camera and behind the camera working together, talking about their conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, if you would have come to me and said, that's the idea for my show, what do you think? I would have said, you're going to start a war. I mean, how are we going to do that show? And yet,
Yeah.
it's very successful. It's very emotional, and it's one of my favorite shows. I look at that show, and I think of all the other things that are happening in Israel right now in terms of television, and I know a lot of it is because of streaming, because the streamers are interested in international product, and they're interested
Definitely.
in international subscribership.
Yeah.
And so, I've had conversations with them where they say, well, could you bring us something that's appropriate for the Middle East or for South America? And so they're sort of helping it along. But do you think that's really what's caused it, or do you think it's something else, and this has just helped it along?
I think, well, Israel is in an interesting place. I mean, first of all, it's there's a lot of exposure to American or British TV, more than in other places, because there was, for many years, there wasn't other options. So a lot of people are watching both European and American TV, and they have a lot of background. There's a lot of talent, because I mean, it's a special place, interesting place. The way you are brought up. There's so many challenges and so many diverse ideas that you are open to. So little by little, people started writing things, and then I think the American industry picked up on it, and you have the. I mean, part of why, to me, Fauda is such an interesting show, because it's reality, it's Israeli reality,
Yeah.
but it's about this unit of undercover Israeli commandos who go undercover as Arabs, and they go into terror groups and into the Kasbahs of Gaza or Judea and Samaria, and they act as Arabs, and they are trying to either prevent terror acts or find out information, all of that. But the crazy thing about it, and again, that's very much Israel. You can sit in your house in like Israel, in your little private house with a yard and talk, and your kids are running around and playing, and then you get a phone call, and basically, and that's the why, because everything is so close. They tell you need to come. There's an operation. You get into your car, and basically 20 minutes later, you are in a war zone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how fast this turns from one way of living to another. And I think what they do very well is not show it very one dimensionally, but you see both sides. There's none of the sides is good or bad. It's just the reality of what's happening in Israel. So I think that's that gives you a way of seeing things in a different way, and that's part of Israel, because it's such a special and unusual place. Shtiso is again, Alan, another example of the same thing, of this world within a world that is such a recluse but interesting and fascinating situation, and that's part of what Israel is. So that, combined with them, a lot of Israelis go and study abroad and study in the States and get into the industry and come back and bring all of that, that with the streaming being looking for stuff, that kind of brought about this flourishing of Israeli TV.
Yeah. And especially with Fauda, with in front of the camera and behind the camera, them using both Palestinians and Israelis is a sort of almost a first in terms of my understanding of how that could work, or how it's actually working.
Yeah.
And that's terribly fascinating. I watch the show and I'm thinking, what's behind the camera, who's behind the camera, and what's their relationship to each other.
Yeah.
It's really, and it's very emotional. I mean, I find that the characters are drawn, and you're brought into it in a very emotional way.
And it has the same, like Homeland always would start a bit slower, with everything kind of brewing, and you little by little you try to figure out what's going on, what's the operation, where the problem is, and then come episode 4 or 5, it just the pace picks up, and then by the end you was like, I want to watch this because I'm so into that. And the same with Fauda. It just draws you in for 3-4 episodes, and then it's nonstop action. But it's not just action for the sake of action. It's action with, you are emotionally connected to the parts as well. It's a really good show.
Yeah, I agree.
You've worked all over the world in TV and film. It's funny. Gil and I have bumped into the fact on one occasion where a film production culture is different from country to country. We bumped into that a couple of times.
Yeah.
Are there places where you feel like the film production culture is better versus worse?
You know, it's on one hand, and I do work like in a lot of places, and on one hand, so much is the same. I mean, people dress the same way, talk the same way, look the same way. It's really funny to see when you go from LA to Cape Town to Berlin or Jerusalem, and you see the same people in the same space. But each place has its own. I mean, Israel being Israel, you go to makeup and they talk to you, and then you do your scene, and then there's a touch up, and the makeup artist would, which will never happen at the stage, was like, in that scene you could have done this and this, or they will have comments, and they will tell you that.
Of course they will.
And this is so Israel, but yeah, that's it. Other places, I was surprised. Let's say I was shooting something in London a year ago, and actually I was surprised by how disorganized one production was. I don't say that's the British way. Maybe that was the same. I mean, that particular production, but there was something. I mean, in England, it wasn't that. No, it wasn't a disorganized thing, but it was that. Almost a caste system of how things are being done. So the director is a bit more distant and unapproachable than other places.
The last time you worked in England and London, what was your craft services table like?
Not great. But talking about craft service, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah,
to
that's
talk
our
about.
experience.
No, exactly. But I'm in Paris and I'm shooting the series, and we're breaking for lunch for the first time, and we're sitting by the tables, and each table has a bottle of wine. I mean, it's 1 p.m. and there's a bottle of wine and wine glasses, and I'm like, what the hell is this? I remember I took a photo and put it on Instagram. I was like, yeah,
different culture. Different culture.
This is lunch. But it's funny how different it is.
Mark, we could go on and on and on. But you have a Sunday afternoon, and you have a family and a life, and I can't thank you enough for sitting and chatting with us.
It was my pleasure.
About craft.
Thank you, Mark. You. Really very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think a lot of our people that watch our show will really enjoy this, because it's so from a different perspective on one level, and yet from a very, very understandable perspective for them on another. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
And hey, let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
We'll see you next time, everybody. The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.